Shocking. Billionaire's insane reaction after black teacher sleeps on floor with baby. It all started with a quiet thud. Then, chaos erupted, like thunder booming in a serene valley. In the heart of this upscale neighborhood, an unexpected twist unraveled at the opulent mansion of billionaire Carter Reynolds. The news ripped through the air, sending shivers down the spines of those who heard it. A black teacher, no less, had chosen to sleep on the floor next to an abandoned child in a house that oozed wealth. What on earth would possess someone to do that? The first responders were barely prepared for the scene, a room adorned with crystal chandeliers and plush carpets, now shadowed by the haunting image of a motherly figure curled up with the baby right next to expensive furniture that seemed so out of place that as jaws dropped, whispers spread like wildfire. Those around exchanged bewildered glances, unable to comprehend the stark contrast between opulence and despair. A heartbeat thumped loudly in the silence. Who is she? And why here? Eyes widened, breath held care to choke on a mixture of shock and confusion. It was as if the mansion itself disapproved of such an unimaginable sight, its walls pressing down, desperate to suffocate the reality they witnessed. Was this an act of bravery? Or sheer madness? And who had the gall to challenge the status quo in such an extravagant place? Only moments later, Carter Reynolds arrived, and all eyes snapped to him. His tight jaw and trembling hands painted a picture of disbelief that sent waves through the onlookers. What would he say? Would the billionaire's heart soften, or would his wealth breed contempt? Those present could barely breathe, as the air thickened with anticipation. Time seemed to stretch, and every flicker of Carter's eyes became a focal point. His chest rose and fell quickly, a reflection of the storm brewing inside him. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. His icy blue eyes narrowed, taking in the scene. Could something so wrong be right? They lingered on the pair on the floor, and the whole room held its breath. Everyone could sense the weight of the moment. Would his reaction redefine the boundaries of love and responsibility? The tension hung thick, threatening to snap at any second. Then, out of nowhere, he stepped forward, and his voice cut through the silence. What is going on here? The question echoed, hanging heavy in the air. The world awaited his answer, wondering if the billionaire could find compassion in a moment so fraught with judgment. What lay ahead in the tangled web of emotions, hopes, and harsh realities? Only time would tell. Carter's jaw clenched tighter as the explosions of whispers swirled around him. What is going on here? He repeated, more forcefully this time, the echo of his voice bouncing back from the lavish decor that surrounded him. He strode through the throng of people, his designer shoes gliding over the polished marble floors, yet every step felt heavy as if the weight of his fortune bore down on him. As he approached the figure on the floor, a sudden stillness engulfed the room. The teacher, Tanya He learned her name from the murmurs, lifted her head slightly, eyes wide and brimming with uncertainty. The child nestled into her side, oblivious to the chaos swarming around them. Her brow furrowed as she met Carter's fierce gaze, her heart racing with every flutter of courage she could muster. Sir, she began, her voice almost a whisper as she braced herself against the intensity of his scrutiny. I found her, alone. Each word fell like a stone, heavy with the truth of her actions. She needed someone to care, even if it meant lying on this floor. Gasps erupted among the spectators. Carter's heart raced. The reality of her compassion struck him like lightning. Yet, a nagging doubt lurked at the periphery of his mind. You chose my home. He snapped, his voice sharp, laced with something between anger and fear. Why here? Why my house? The question hung, sharp and unforgiving, and for a moment, the world outside that lavish mansion blurred. It was like they stood on the precipice of something unthinkable. Tanya's breath hitched, her resolve faltering. Because she started but faltered, unsure of how to explain the desperation that drove her. Because some places deserve to be filled with love and some moments call for compassion over comfort. Carter's eyes narrowed further. The contrast of her words against the backdrop of his wealth made him squirm. A small voice in him fought with the reality that he had been so far removed from. Filled with distraction, he glanced back at the onlookers, their disbelief palpable. This was far more than a scandal now, it was a sentiment that could shatter his carefully curated image. In that heartbeat of hesitation, Tanya began to rise, cradling the baby close to her. The weight of her decision was heavy, she was acutely aware that by provoking his wrath, there was a chance she could end everything she'd done to help. Yet still, she stood her ground, defiance radiating from her every pore. People are hurting out there, she pressed on, her voice growing steadier. Ignoring them doesn't make the problem disappear. Don't let this moment pass you by. The murmuring crowd stilled as the tension thickened. Carter's expression shifted, confusion dancing in his icy blue eyes as he tried to understand her boldness. This was not how he'd imagined today would unfold. This wasn't just about a black teacher on the floor, it was about a choice, a challenge to accept reality or retreat into the safety of privilege. Are you seriously going to let this happen? Someone shouted from the back, their voice trembling with frustration. The question pierced through the tension, urging Carter to act. There was a flicker of choice, a locus of power had shifted, revealing an unsettling truth. Just then, the baby stirred, whining softly, drowning the room in an unexpected layer of vulnerability. Carter's heart skipped as he watched Tanya cradle the child protectively. He felt a rush of conflicting emotions, a bizarre blend of admiration for her courage and dread over what this revelation might mean for him. The stakes had risen, yet he felt so very lost. He took a deep breath, the air heavy with expectation, and stepped closer to them. I want to understand. Before he could finish, a door slammed shut somewhere in the mansion, reverberating like a gunshot. All heads turned, and the tension seemed to crackle in the air as if the mansion itself held its breath, waiting for the next revelation. What lay behind that door? Another hidden truth that could change everything? The noise erupted in stumbles and gasps, a rippling wave of confusion that made the fabric of the room tremble with uncertainty. All eyes locked onto the door that had slammed shut, tension thick enough to choke everyone in the vicinity. Carter felt the color drain from his face, questions flashing through his mind like wildfire. What or who had just derailed this moment? He cast one more glance at Tanya, whose eyes were wild with a mix of fear and determination. The baby stirred again, a soft whimper cutting through the style and wealth surrounding them, reminding Carter of life outside the bubble he'd crafted. He took another step, unsure if he was drawn to her bravery or to the dread continuing to coil in his gut. What's behind that door? He demanded, the question reverberating against the opulent walls of the mansion. Tanya's voice broke through the murmurs. Whatever it is, it can't be worse than what we're ignoring right here. We have to choose. Choose what? He shot back, frustration boiling over. This isn't a game. But as he looked at her, something in her expression shifted. She wasn't afraid anymore. Whatever courage had fueled her determination was now igniting something in him, but also maybe exposing a flicker of vulnerability, a crack in his immovable facade. A figure emerged from the shadows behind the door. Carter's breath hitched, and time seemed to stretch as the familiar form of Greg, his longtime friend and advisor, came into view. But there was something off about him. He was rattled, his face pale and wide-eyed, as if he had just seen a ghost. Carter. Greg called, urgency cutting through the tension. The room hushed again, the silence pregnant with waiting breaths. You need to come here. It's urgent. What's happening? Carter demanded, his heart pounding furiously in his chest. Not here. Please, Greg strained, shooting a glance toward Tanya and the onlookers. We don't have time to explain. Carter hesitated, torn. The dilemma hung like a yoke over his neck. Could he turn his back on this? On Tanya, on the child? Carter, Greg urged, raw panic evident in his voice, you need to see this, it's about your family. The gravity of the words slammed into him, sending shockwaves through his core as if the very ground beneath him had shifted. Painful memories sprang forth. His family had been perfect, poised beneath the sheen of wealth and privilege. What do you mean? He asked, fear making his voice tremble. Just come with me, Greg insisted, the urgency in his voice igniting a fire of trepidation in Carter's heart. He cast one last glance back at Tanya, whose jaw set firm with determination. Would she understand? Could he abandon this moment? But the mention of family was a call he could not ignore. Fine, he said, swallowing hard, but I need to resolve this first. He gestured towards the crowd, heart pounding, not just from unease but from the weight of responsibility. Your time is running out, Greg replied, his voice dripping with dread. Trust me. Before he could change his mind, he mounted a decisive step toward Greg, but the air shifted dramatically. Unbeknownst to him, someone from the crowd had slipped away, a shadow melding into the opulent decor. In the echoing silence, a single voice whispered through the crowd, everything is connected. You have no idea what's waiting for you out there. The words barely registered in his mind, a haunting reminder of the tangled web of his life, but the impact landed hard like a kick to the gut. As Carter moved toward the door, adrenaline surged. What awaited him on the other side? Would he find the truth he sought, or stare into the abyss that threatened to consume him? The door creaked open, drawing the shadows closer. Carter stepped through the doorway, the creak echoing ominously in the silence. The dimly lit corridor beyond was lined with portraits of ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow him, bearing witness to the upheaval about to unfold. Greg stood a few paces ahead, his back tense, as if waiting for some unseen threat to emerge. What is this about, Greg? Carter pressed, a cold sweat forming on his brow. Just, keep moving, Greg urged, glancing back over his shoulder, his unease palpable. The hall stretched ahead, shrouded in shadows that clung to the walls like secrets. A flickering overhead light painted their silhouettes in eerie strokes, amplifying the ominous atmosphere. Carter felt the weight of every footstep, the echoes growing louder as they approached a door marked with ancient carvings. Why here? Carter was breathless now, the air thickening around him. He could hear the faint cries of the baby somewhere behind him, a haunting reminder of what he might leave behind. Greg hesitated, glancing back as if measuring the distance to their escape. Just trust me. He insisted, pushing the door open. The room beyond was small and cramped, the walls lined with dusty bookshelves that seemed to loom with years of forgotten knowledge. In the center stood a table, cluttered with papers and photographs. Carter's heart sank as he recognized the faces in the pictures, his family, smiling at events that felt like lifetimes ago. But alongside them were people he didn't know, their expressions twisted in anger and sorrow. What is this? Carter felt his stomach churn. What is going on? Carter, Greg said, his voice tense. You need to see this. He gestured toward the far side of the table, where a newspaper lay open. The headline leapt out, shocking him, Billionaire's family ties to controversial scandal. Carter's breath caught as he read the small print beneath the headline, legal battles, accusations of corruption, all leading back to his family name. No, this can't be right, he whispered. It is, Greg said quietly, and it's just getting started. The whispers have turned into screams, and it's spreading. You need to know who you're dealing with. Who you're related to. A knot formed in his throat, the walls of the room closing in. Who? Tell me, Greg. But even as the words left his mouth, a sickening sense of dread crawled up his spine. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the other side of the house, breaking the fragile silence that had formed around them. Carter's heart raced. What the hell was that? Greg's face went pale. We're not alone. Carter swung his eyes to the door, and instinct took over. He shoved it open, stepping back into the corridor. The chaos seemed to reverberate off the walls, infecting the air around him. "Wait!" Greg's shout cut through the noise, but Carter was moving, propelled by a need for answers, for safety. But as he turned the corner, he stopped dead in his tracks. A figure stood at the far end cloaked in shadow, face obscured. A chill ran through him, recognition mixing with dread. "What do you want?" he called out, voice shaky. The shadow shifted, a grin spreading across a face Carter had hoped never to see again. "You really thought you could hide from the truth?" Adrenaline surged through him, and just as he made to take another step, the lights flickered, plunging the corridor into darkness. Panic gripped him. A voice echoed in the darkness, deep and resonant, weaving through his mind, "Everything is connected, Carter. You're about to discover how deep the rabbit hole goes." A breath caught in his throat. What lay ahead could either shatter him or set him free. Either way, a reckoning was coming. And this time, there would be no turning back. The darkness wrapped around Carter, thick and suffocating. He felt his heart hammering in his chest, a frantic rhythm that echoed like a warning bell. Every muscle in his body screamed for him to move, but the looming figure kept him frozen. "Face it, Carter," the voice crooned, slithering into his ears like smoke. "Your entire life is built on lies. You were never meant to escape the truth." He squeezed his eyes shut, trying to block out the malevolence seeping through the shadows. The faint cries of a baby echoed in his mind, pulling him back to reality, a desperate reminder of his responsibility, of what was truly at stake. With trembling hands, he fumbled for his phone, the screen a beacon in the lightless void. He needed to see, to understand. The dim glow illuminated the hall, casting long shadows that danced to the tune of his growing dread. But the figure was gone. "Where are you?" he shouted, voice cracking. "Show yourself." Silence. Then laughter. It was low and mocking, wrapping around him like chains. "Pathetic," it taunted. "You think you're the main character in this tale? There's a bigger story here, and you're just a pawn." Carter's throat tightened. "Who are you?" One more heartbeat of silence, then a whisper slipped through the darkness. "Someone who knows all your family's dirty little secrets." Just like that, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the corridor. Heart racing, he looked for the figure, but the hallway was empty now, the portraits watching him more intently than ever. Each face, once a source of comfort, now seemed to hold accusations. "Carter." Greg appeared at the end of the hallway, his expression a blend of fear and urgency. "We have to go. Now." "What about Carter?" began, but Greg was having none of it. "Forget it. They've found us. We're running out of time." The panic on Greg's face urged him into action. They sprinted back to the doorway, adrenaline fueling their escape. But a loud thud resonated from down the corridor, heavy footsteps advancing toward them, growing ever closer. Carter's breath quickened again. "What's coming?" he gasped, forcing his feet to move faster. "Family, enemies, people who want you just as much as the truth does," Greg said, urgency lining his voice. "It's all intertwined. You have to fight." As they raced through the labyrinth of corridors, the walls closed in, adorned with remnants of a legacy he was only beginning to grasp, a legacy marred by scandal, lies, and darkness. Suddenly, an explosion of sound erupted from a nearby room, crashing, shouting, chaos spilling over the threshold. Carter skidded to a halt. "What now?" "We can't go that way." Greg pulled him back, but curiosity tugged at Carter. Who was in there? What had they unleashed? "Wait!" Carter shouted, grabbing Greg by the arm. "We have to see." But as they turned to approach the door, it burst open. A figure staggered outwards, bloodied and wild-eyed. "Run! They're coming for you." His words sliced through the air, stark and urgent. The child's cries echoed around him, a siren call piercing the chaos. "No!" Carter shouted, but the figure was already stumbling away, swallowed by the darkness anew. "Get back!" Greg yelled as another noise erupted down the corridor. Metallic scraping met his ears, and an unyielding terror clawed at Carter's insides. "We have to go now!" Greg screamed, instinctively yanking him back towards safety, but Carter felt bound to this place, a haunting anchor. As they darted away, the world felt unmoored. What was outside needed to be faced. "Carter!" Greg's voice shook him from his thoughts. "You can't run from it forever." He broke free, turning to face what loomed behind them. The figure emerged again, more pronounced, stepping into the dim light like a phantom summoned from his nightmares. "Do you really want to know the truth?" Carter felt the gravity of the moment weigh heavy on him. Each second stretched, filled with dread and uncertainty. "We don't have time." Greg's plea shot through the air, urgent and fierce, but Carter couldn't move. Couldn't look away from the face that promised answers and chaos in equal measure. "Trust your instincts, Carter," the figure beckoned, eyes glinting like knives. "Face what lies ahead or watch everything you love burn to ash." A new and terrifying possibility unfolded in his mind. The truth could lead to salvation or destruction. Carter made his choice, just as shadows converged behind him, threats and whispers swathing him like a storm. "Let us find out just how deep this rabbit hole goes." The scream of his baby echoed in the distance, searing the urgency into his soul. But the question now was, could he survive the fall? Carter stood at the precipice of his own confusion, caught between the beckoning figure and the chaos pushing him forward. Sweat trickled down his back as he battled the urge to flee or confront. The air vibrated with tension, and Greg's frantic whisper seemed to echo in his mind, "We don't have time. Get out of my head." Carter shouted, his voice shattering the silence. The darkness around him throbbed, but the figure only drew closer, a silhouette melding with the shadows, an ominous presence wrapping tighter around his sanity. "It's too late for denial," it hissed, something almost sympathetic in its tone. "The truth always catches up. Are you ready?" With every word, the weight of the truth increased. He felt himself teetering at the edge of revelation and despair, knowing what lay ahead could fracture his already splintered world into jagged pieces. Behind him, the echoing footsteps grew louder, a storm of pursuers hungry for blood and answers. "Carter!" Greg's voice was a lifeline, and he grasped it tightly. "We can't stay here. We need to go now." Heart pounding, Carter tuned out the figure's hypnotic voice and nodded. "Let us move." They darted around the corner, desperation fueling their feet. The pounding of their hearts mingled with the thundering footsteps drawing closer. They reached a pair of double doors, splintered and slightly ajar. A flickering light streamed from within, illuminating Greg's face, taut with fear. As he pushed through the door, Carter caught a glimpse of the room filled with chaos, overturned furniture, broken glass, and an ominous silence that felt just as suffocating as the darkness outside. "What is this place?" he breathed, scanning for potential exits, for allies. "That's what we've got to find out," Greg urged, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "They're coming." But before Carter could respond, a shape moved in the shadows. A woman, panic-stricken and holding a bundle close to her chest. "Run!" she cried, eyes wide with raw terror. "They're just behind me." The sight of her desperation struck a chord deep within him. "Where's the baby?" he asked, voice rising in urgency. She revealed the bundle, a tiny face, frail and asleep, oblivious to the chaos surrounding them. Carter's heart lurched. That helpless life was the embodiment of everything he was fighting for, everything that demanded he face this nightmare head-on. "Help us!" the woman begged. Greg shook his head, glancing at the door where terrifying blue shadows flickered on the ground. "No. They'll find us." But contrary to Greg's instincts, Carter stepped closer to the woman. "What do you know? What is going on?" She trembled, glancing back over her shoulder. "Your name. They know your name." The secrets, they're coming for the truth. The air shifted, charged with impending danger. Time slipped through his fingers like sand. He took a moment, searching her face for courage. What secrets? No time. She shouted, urgency bursting forth like a dam breaking. You have to. A deafening crash interrupted her. The door splintered, half broken. Shadowy figures surged into the room. Their presence altered everything, turning the atmosphere electric with fear. Run! Greg shouted, turning toward the back exit, but Carter hesitated. This moment was pivotal. Unraveling the tangled web of his past could expose deadly truths, but ignoring it would mean leaving everyone behind. The child's soft cries pierced through the chaos, grounding him. Carter took a deep breath and made a choice. Not without the baby. He yelled, lunging forward. The woman started to protest, but he grabbed the bundle, cradling it in his arms as if it were the very essence of hope itself. With Greg at his side, they bolted towards the shattered window, the figures chasing them with venomous rage, demanding everything he had hidden. In an adrenaline-fueled leap, they crashed through the glass and tumbled onto the cold ground below. Breathing hard, they scrambled to their feet and faced the still looming shadows ahead, the very embodiment of truths yet to be uncovered. Where do we go now? Greg asked, panic growing. In his eyes, Carter looked down at the baby in his arms. The cries echoed like a warning bell. The only way forward now seemed to be into the unknown, where each answer might lead them deeper into danger. We keep running until we find the truth, he asserted, determination flooding his veins, but as they sprinted into the depths of the night, an unsettling thought gnawed at him. What if the truth they sought was more monstrous than he could ever imagine? The shadows danced mockingly around them, but Carter was ready to face whatever came next. The question now loomed larger than ever: would the truth set him free, or would it strip him of everything he held dear? The night swallowed them whole as they raced away, the cries of the baby and the shouts of the figures fading into an echoing panic behind them. Carter's heart hammered in his chest, each beat pounding with urgency and dread. The flickering street lamps did little to part the oppressive darkness, but he concentrated on putting one foot in front of the other, clinging tightly to the fragile life in his arms. Where do we even go? Greg huffed beside him, glancing over his shoulder as if he could sense the shadows creeping closer. They could be anywhere. Carter felt a tightness in his throat. I don't know. We just need to get as far away as possible. But in the back of his mind, doubts churned like storm clouds. He knew there was nowhere to run from the past, especially when it was as relentless as the dark figures pursuing them. The baby's whimpering cut through his thoughts. He glanced down, reassured by the warmth of the little body against him. We've got this. We have to protect her, he whispered, more to himself than to Greg. Somehow, that child became everything, a heartbeat tethering him to hope in a world filled with unraveling mysteries and potential horrors. They stumbled into an alley, wedged between an abandoned warehouse and a crumbling brick building. The smell of damp concrete stung their noses, but at least they could hide, at least for a moment. Breathless, they pressed against the cold wall, straining to listen, hearts pounding in sync. Do you think they lost us? Greg whispered, peering into the shadows. Carter shook his head. No. They'll find us. We're not safe like this. Light from a distant street lamp flickered like a beacon, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Panic clashed with a flicker of determination in Carter's gut. We can't just stand here. They're hunting for something, maybe even someone. We need to figure out what is happening. Before Greg could object, Carter turned, already scanning the alley. An old door, rusty hinges barely clinging to the frame, beckoned to them. He reached for it, pushing it open with a crunch of debris beneath his feet. The sound echoed ominously, and a shiver skittered down his spine, warning him they were still not alone. Carter! Greg hissed, as the groan of the door rang louder than their whispers. What if it's a trap? We won't know unless we check, he replied, his voice steady in spite of the trembling fear beneath the surface. Carter stepped inside, the darkness swallowing him. The space was small, filled with crates stacked carelessly against the walls and cluttered remnants of what once could have been a workroom. The air was stale, cold against his skin. He scanned the perimeter, noting a faint sliver of light seeping through a boarded window. "This might lead to the other side," he said, the baby shifting slightly in his arms. "We have to stay quiet. If we can get out through there, we might just enough time to figure out what's really going on." The stillness in the room wrapped tightly around them, almost suffocating. They stayed close, the hidden truths swirling like ghosts in the corners of the dim space. As they moved forward, Greg's eyes widened in the dark. "What is that?" He pointed toward a dusty table in the corner cluttered with papers and old photographs. Some were torn and faded, but others vividly captured moments a young family, laughing, blissfully unaware of the terror that was stalking them. Carter's breath caught. Among the snapshots, one struck him like a punch to the gut. The woman from the room along with a man whose eyes were undeniably familiar, strikingly clouded by memories that slammed into him like waves. Greg's voice trembled as the pieces fell together around them, floating dangerously close to some unthinkable truth. "What if this is about your family?" Before Carter could respond, the door slammed open. Blue shadows flooded into the room, spilling their menace and intent. "Get down!" Greg yelled, instinctively pushing Carter and the baby behind a stack of crates. Carter's heart raced as he clutched the baby tightly. The shadows encroached, relentless and powerful. "Find them!" A cold voice pierced through the dark. "The truth cannot escape." As the ominous figures spread throughout the room, panic surged in Carter. Every fiber of his being screamed at him to flee, to shield the innocent life he held. What was the truth they sought? What cruel twist lay in wait for him and his unwitting allies? Without warning, a cry from the baby echoed, cutting through the chaos like a knife. Time was slipping away. Carter's heart thundered in anticipation of the unknown, and somewhere inside, he realized the stakes were higher than he could have ever imagined. Now they had nowhere to hide. Carter turned, betrayal and panic battling in his chest. Was he about to uncover a dark legacy, or would it mean their end? The question loomed heavy in the air. Could he confront the past without losing everyone he loved? Carter pressed himself against the wooden crates, heart pounding like a drum in his chest. The cold sweat clung to his skin as panic washed over him. Shadows surged through the doorway, coalescing into the figures that haunted his nightmares. Their menacing presence contrasted sharply with the innocent cry of the baby nestled against him, an impossibly fragile reminder of what was at stake. "Keep quiet," he whispered urgently to Greg, who was wide-eyed and trembling beside him. Every fiber of Carter's being screamed for action, but reason kept him still, anchored by the baby's presence. The figures moved deliberately, scanning the room with predatory intent. Fingers traced shapes across the dusty surfaces, searching for secrets hidden in the darkness. Chills skittered down his spine. What truth were they after? Was it tied to him or the baby? Just then, a beam of moonlight broke through the boarded window, illuminating a face he couldn't ignore. Their leader had piercing eyes that glinted with malice. "Where are they?" the leader hissed, glancing back at the others. Carter could see the desire for violence simmering just below the surface of their composure. The urgency to flee clawed at him, but inaction could mean discovery. As they searched, an idea sparked within him. "We have to create a diversion," he said through gritted teeth. "If we make noise, it might draw them away." Greg's eyes darted around the tiny space, calculating. "And then what? We just run out like idiots." Carter swallowed hard. "It's better than sitting here. Trust me." He looked at the baby, her tiny face scrunched up in distress. Carter could feel the weight of his decision pressing down, each heartbeat quickening as he considered the risks. He wanted nothing more than to keep her safe, but silence was their ally, and it was slipping through their fingers. With a deep breath, he turned his attention back to the table. There were remnants of tools scattered about: old screws, a rusted wrench, and if his instincts were correct, an old firework kit tucked in a corner. The remnants of noise tucked inside that warehouse beckoned to him. "Cover your ears," he instructed, reaching for the firework. Greg's brows knitted in confusion, but he nodded, his resolve unmistakable. As he lit the firework, a rush of adrenaline coursed through him, as pure and electric as the rush of panic flooding through the room. He hurled it across the room just as the pact of shadows began closing in on them. The explosion startled Carter as he ducked instinctively, pain flaring through his ears. The shadows bolted toward the sound, confusion replacing their focused search. The sound of the firework echoed, reverberating in the space with chaos now engulfing the room. "Let us move." Carter fueled his urgency, rising and shoving through the maze of crates with Greg close behind. They stumbled into the next room, deeper into the belly of hopelessness. The flickering lights cast erratic shadows on the walls, sending sparks of fear burning through them. They sprinted through the debris, their footsteps echoing, a heartbeat away from discovery. Just as they rounded a corner, Greg skidded to a stop, hand gripping Carter's arm. "This way." He pointed to a door at the far end, a dull light streaming through the edges. "Come on," Carter urged, pushing forward, hope igniting a fire inside him. As they neared the door, a cruel laugh echoed. "We know you're in here." It rang out, crisp and chilling, and Carter felt the ice creep over him. They were not far behind. The doorknob was rusted but unlocked. Carter opened it, heart racing faster than his feet could carry him. The space beyond looked like the remains of an old office. Heavy shadows loomed ominously in the corners. "Where do we go now?" Greg said, voice shaking. "We need to find an exit." With every ounce of urgency left in him, Carter scanned the room. Time wasn't on their side. He felt an overwhelming truth weighing him down. The past was chasing him, ready to catch up. "Carter." Greg's voice cracked, his eyes darting behind them as shadows flickered in the doorway. "Over here." Carter pointed to a battered window that could lead to freedom, but as he turned back, he felt a grip on his shoulder. Cold and rough, the shadows had returned, smirking with dreadful delight. "Found you," the leader drawled, stepping into the dim light. "Now let us talk about that truth." Panic surged again. The stakes had turned deadly high, and the question hung thick in the air: would they finally learn what darkness was entangled in Carter's past, or was this the end of their desperate escape? Carter's heart raced. The leader's grip was iron-tight and filled with a sickening sense of control. Fear pooled in his stomach, making him feel lightheaded. He glanced at Greg. His friend's expression mirrored his own, terror mixed with desperation. They had come too far to be caught now. "Let her go," Greg blurted out, summoning whatever courage remained. His voice trembled but held a hint of defiance. The leader's lips curled into a twisted smirk. "Let her go. You're going to have to do better than that," he said, his words laced with mockery. "You think you can just run away from what you've done?" Carter's mind raced to piece together the implications. Done? What was there to fuel this vendetta? Before he could ponder further, the leader leaned in closer, lowering his voice to a chilling whisper. "You're the one we've been looking for, Carter." Cold dread washed over him. How did they know his name? Images flickered through his mind, faces, places, a past he thought he'd buried. "I don't know what you want," he shouted back, though doubt laced his voice. "Don't play coy. Your little games might have fooled others, but not us." The leader's eyes glinted as his grip tightened. "Now it's time for a reunion." As if the shadows had decided to join in the conversation, a monstrous laugh erupted from behind. The rest of the figures edged forward, filling the doorway with more threats than Carter could handle. He turned his gaze to Greg, feeling the weight of the baby in his arms. Their survival rested on a razor's edge. "Carter," Greg whispered urgently, "we can't give up. There has to be a way out." "Shoo!" Carter hissed back, desperately quieting the escalating chaos around them. He had to think. There was something, anything he could use. In that instant, desperate clarity struck him. He didn't need to fight them head-on, but he did need to buy them time. He took a steady breath, not breaking eye contact with the leader. "Fine," he said, injecting false bravado into his voice. "You want to talk? Let us talk." You know I can make this worth your while. The leader raised an eyebrow, intrigued for just a moment. Go on, he said, tilting his head slightly. Let me see your people, Carter breathed. They deserve a chance. This baby, she deserves a future. It was a gamble, sailing into uncharted waters, but desperation often left little choice. The smirk vanished, replaced with a calculating gaze. Interesting request, he said slowly, as if savoring the flavor of Carter's fear. You're a bold one. But why should I trust you? I have no allegiance to you, Carter declared, throwing caution to the wind. But I do have something that belongs to you. You don't truly wish to harm the innocent, do you? The leader's eyes narrowed, weighing the truth in Carter's statement. All right. I'll give you a chance, but, if you deceive me. The room held its breath, darkness coiling tightly around them. Greg stepped closer, as if drawn by some invisible force. What's the real deal, Carter? He whispered, voice just above a breath. Carter could only shake his head, heart pounding frantically in his chest. I don't know yet. Suddenly, there was a loud crash from the far side of the room, a window shattering. The shadows snapped to attention, and chaos erupted. Carter saw his chance. Now! He yelled, shoving Greg ahead. They burst for the window, but more shadows lurked behind them. A pulse of fear surged through him. They dashed across the space, the baby clutched tightly, their freedom just inches away as the cold night air beckoned. A thunderous shout echoed behind them. Get them! Carter limped on as darkness loomed ever closer, realization dawning that selling a lie to the shadows was the last game he could play. The truth rolled like a storm cloud in his guts. Would they make it? Or would the past finally consume them in its relentless grip? The question pulsed like a heartbeat, pushing them forward into the unknown. Carter hurled himself through the open window, gasping as he landed hard on the pavement outside. The impact jarred him awake, igniting raw adrenaline. He secured the baby closer to his chest, cradling her against the weight of his racing heart. Greg followed through the window, legs flailing in a chaotic rush, urgency saturating the night. Run! Now! Carter barked, adrenaline coursing. They sprinted down the street, echoes of their footsteps reverberating loudly against the cold asphalt, each step an act of defiance against the shadows pooling behind them. They tore down the block, desperate to put distance between themselves and the dark truths clawing at their heels. Where do we go? Greg shouted, breathless, glancing over his shoulder into the suffocating darkness threatening to swallow them. Carter didn't know. The streets blurred into a dizzying swirl of streetlights and shadows around him. There! He yelled, pointing toward a brightly lit diner with a flickering neon sign. We can hide in there. They barreled through the door, bursts of hot air hitting their faces. The hum of conversation filled the diner, stark and comforting. He spotted a booth in the back corner and raced towards it, the familiar smell of coffee grounding him. Slumping down, he inhaled deeply, taking a moment to gain control. The baby quiet now snuggled against him, and he felt a flicker of hope ignite within. We should call the cops, Greg suggested, frantically wiping sweat from his brow. No, Carter replied, shaking his head. Not yet. There's too much going on. His eyes drifted to the windows, scanning for any shadowy figures lurking outside. We can't expose her, not yet. What are we going to do? Greg's voice trembled. Carter felt the weight of uncertainty settle over him like a dark cloud. He had fled from lies, but the truth was still a mountain looming ahead, shadowing all he held dear. Whatever it takes, he whispered, clutching the baby tightly. He knew that meant confronting the shadows, embracing the chaos rather than running from it. Carter, Greg began, hesitating. What if the truth, what if it shatters everything? Carter met his friend's gaze, grounding himself in the moment. I'd rather face it than live in fear. His resolve solidified. If I don't confront this, the past will keep creeping back. And I won't let that happen. The baby stirred, a slight whimper breaking through the tension surrounding them. Carter looked down at her frail face, determination surging through him anew. As the waitress approached, he focused on her, drawing strength from the mundane. "Can we get some water?" he asked, words steady despite the storm raging inside. "Sure thing, Han," she replied with a warm smile, oblivious to the tempest bubbling beneath the surface. The normalcy of the moment contrasted deeply with their chaotic flight, offering a flicker of ease he desperately needed. Carter leaned closer to Greg. "We need to find out who these people are. We need to understand this family scandal." "But the shadows, they want something," Greg interjected, eyes wide. "What if this leads us back to them? They already know who I am, my family's history has put me in the crosshairs," Carter said, his voice low but simmering with energy. "Every step has led us here. We must confront whatever's at the end, even if that means losing everything." Greg paled at the thought, the enormity weighing on them both. "Carter, no," he interrupted, a flint of resolve flashing in his eyes. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about her." He gestured to the baby, whose soft coos wrapped around them like a blanket of innocence. "I'm not running from this. Not anymore." In that diner, as the world bustled around them, the gravity of their fight crystallized. They had to unravel the truths that chained them to the past. The shadows would not claim them, not while they still breathed. The waitress returned with humble glasses of water. Carter took a deep breath, steeling himself. "After this, we go back," he declared, the path ahead forming in his mind, each step clearer than the last. With newfound determination, they would forge ahead, confront the shadows lurking in the recesses of his family's legacy, and illuminate the dark corners that had kept them shackled for far too long. As they finished their water, ready to confront the storm awaiting them, the diner felt like a transient sanctuary, a brief pause before the deluge. "Let us go finish this," Carter said, standing up, a wave of certainty pushing through him. Every heartbeat counted now. The past was intertwined with his future, and darkness would not dictate his path any longer, and so, they stepped back into the night, resolve burning bright. But one last spark of clarity cleared the fog in his mind. The thought rang loudly. If he didn't face what lay ahead, everything would burn to ash. You need to subscribe now. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. And flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. This is the moment to show your support.